Have you ever wondered how websites work? How clicking a button can add items to your cart? Or how new posts magically appear on your feed? The answer to all that is JavaScript. If HTML is the skeleton of a web page and CSS is the skin and clothes that give it style, then JavaScript is the brain and nervous system that brings it to life. Hi, my name is Jason Joshi. With years of teaching as well as industry experience in the field of computer science, I am here to hold your hand and introduce you to the fascinating world of JavaScript. In the next hour, you're going to learn the fundamentals of JavaScript. But we are not going to just learn theory. We are going to build a real interactive web application from scratch, which is a random code generator. An app that will generate random codes and display it on the screen on the click of a button. By the end of this video, you will have built this yourself and you will understand exactly how to use JavaScript to make your own web pages interactive. If you ever wanted to get into web development, then this is the perfect place to start. So if you are ready, let's get started. Alright, so as I already told you, we will be building a random code generator application with the JavaScript that we will be studying in this course. Now coming to the setup, in order to write JavaScript or in order to run JavaScript programs, you do not need any special IDE or any sophisticated softwares. You can just start off by writing the code on any simple text editor like Notepad or TextEdit, and you can just save it with the proper extension and you'll be able to run that file on any browser of your choice. Now to make things easy, we will use a free online tool called Replit that sets up everything for us. So we come to replit.com and you can create an account here with your email ID, and once you are done, you will be logged in and greeted with a screen like this. Now here on the left hand side, we have an option to create app. So let's click on this, and here we have a tab called choose a template, and under this you can see that there are various templates, and the template that we are going to choose is this one which says HTML, CSS and JavaScript. So we will choose this template and we can give any name for the app. Let's just call it my.js app and click on create app. Alright, so when we create the app, you can see that this is the kind of screen that we get. We have an AI assistant here, which we will not be making use of. Let me just close that. And you can see that one file called index.html is already open for you. Now here on the left hand side, there is a option for opening the files. Now if I click on this, you can see the files that were created. So you see there are 3 files created automatically: index.html, script.js and style.css. Now in this course, I don't want to simply teach you explicit JavaScript concepts and leave you like that, but I would also like to show you how JavaScript works alongside HTML and CSS so that you can understand how JavaScript is used in real-world applications. So for that, I will give you the HTML and CSS files. The links will be in the description. You can just copy the code from there and put in the index.html and the style.css, and whatever code that we have to write in the JavaScript file, which is script.js, JS stands for JavaScript, so that will be the one that I will be explaining in this video. Alright, so this is the HTML file that we will be using for our project, and let me just click on the run button. Now if I click on the run button, you can see that the web page is loading over here. And you see there is a very simple web page that we have created which says quote of the day, click the button to get your first quote. Now if I click on the button, it does nothing because we have not made any functionality. And as I already told you in the beginning, HTML is like the skeleton of a web page. So we have the skeleton of the web page here. I did not add any CSS yet. Now let me also add the CSS, which is the skin and clothes that gives style to the website. So for that, I will open this style.css file. it is empty for now. So I will paste the CSS code over here. So don't worry, even if you don't understand the CSS code, this course is not about CSS, and even if you don't know it, it is completely fine. You don't have to know it because we are going to focus on the JavaScript. Okay, now if I click on run again, you can see that the appearance of our website has changed. It looks a little more stylish and it looks better now. Okay, so we have added this CSS as well. But even now, if I click on new code or anything, nothing happens. It is just a simple website where there is no functionality added yet. Now we will go to the JavaScript part, which is the brain and the nervous system that will bring this website or this application to life. Okay, now if you see here, we have the index.html file and style.css, and this is the script.js file where the JavaScript code will be written, and it is empty right now. Now there are two ways of writing JavaScript code. You can write it directly in the HTML file itself, or you can give the source of the JavaScript file as it is given here. So if you look at line number 16 here of the HTML file, there is a script tag and it says source equal to script.js. So the script.js is this file that it is referring to, and we close the script tag over here. So that means all the JavaScript for this website will be fetched from this script.js from here, and it will be executed. Now if you are doing this on your local system without using Replit, then just make sure that you create a folder and create these 3 files in the same folder, and then whatever is the name of your JavaScript file, you mention it as a source over here in the script tag. Alright, now we have the HTML and the CSS ready, and now we are in a position to start with the JavaScript part of it. Okay, now before we move ahead, let me just walk you through the sections that we will be covering in this video. So the first section was the setup, which we have completed using Replit. And secondly, we are going to discuss the fundamentals of JavaScript, and in that we will see variables and data types, and we will also see how to apply them by selecting DOM elements into the variables, which will be part of the project. Then we will discuss arrays and objects. We will learn what are arrays and objects, and also we will build the codes array for our random code generator app. And then we will go to functions and loops, where we will learn about functions and for loops, and we will also write a function for our random code generator app that we will be building. And finally, we will assemble everything together that we have learned, tie them together with an event listener, and we will make our project interactive. Alright, so we'll go through each of these topics, and also after each topic, we will see how they can be applied to the project that we are building, and finally we'll see how all of them fold together and we tie them together to make a complete working project. Alright, now coming back to our Replit, let us now open the JavaScript file, and let me type my first code here, which is console.log, and within parentheses let me write hello world. Alright, now you see that I've written hello world here using this console.log. Now console.log is your best friend that you will use for debugging in JavaScript. What it does is it will print the messages to the developer in the console. Now let's see how this works. Let me just stop this and run it again. So if I click on run, you see nothing is displayed over here, but here you see there is something called DevTools. If I click on this small wrench icon, there is something called DevTools. And when I click on this DevTools, you see that at the bottom, this console tab is available. And if you click on the console tab, you can see whatever we printed here is displayed over here. So this is how the console.log works, and this is something that you will be frequently using in JavaScript. Now, if you are doing this in your system without using Replit, if you are doing it on a browser like Google Chrome, you can get this console window by right-clicking anywhere on the browser and going to inspect, and then you will be able to get this developer options where you will get this console tab. Or alternatively, you can also use the shortcut key Ctrl-Shift-J which is for Windows and Linux, or Command Option J on the Mac OS, which will open this console tab for you. Okay, so let's say if I change this, let's say if I write hello from script.js, and now if we refresh our browser, now you see on the console tab we can see hello from script.js. So whatever you write in this console.log will be printed on the screen, and since this is a text that we are printing, we have to enclose them within double quotes. Alright, now we come to the fundamentals, which are variables and data types in JavaScript. Now to do anything useful, we need to store our information, and we do this with variables. Now a variable is like a labeled box which stores some information, and in modern JavaScript we create them using let and const. Now let is for variables whose values might change, and const is for constants whose value will never change after being set. That means if you declare a variable using this let keyword, those are variables which can change in the future. And if you declare a variable using the const keyword, then you will not be able to change it in the future. Okay, so now you can see that I am still on my script.js file, and I have written these things here for you to read, and I have put these 2 slashes in front of these lines. Now what are they? These are known as comments in JavaScript. Comments are like lines that you write for other people to understand your code, and the compiler will just ignore whatever lines are written as comments. So you see that this is still running, and even if I refresh the page, you see that there is no change. These things are just ignored and not printed anywhere. So we just have this web page which comes from our index.html and style.css, and even the console is empty because we are not printing anything on the console right now. Now coming back to our variables and data types, there are different types of data types that you can use in JavaScript. So variables can hold different types of data, and the main ones that you have in JavaScript are strings, numbers, and booleans. So let us look at each of them one by one. So let's talk about strings. Now strings are values like text, and we have to put them inside quotes. They can be single quotes or double quotes, which are both supported in JavaScript. Now let's say that here I am declaring a variable called first name, and I assign it the value Alice. Now this is the syntax for declaring a variable. So here the name of my variable is first name, and I declare it using the let keyword because let is for variables whose values might change. And to it I assign the value Alice using the equal to assignment operator here. And Alice, as you can see, is enclosed within double quotes because it is a string. Now strings in JavaScript have to be enclosed within either single quotes or double quotes. Both of them are supported. And you end the line using a semicolon. Okay. Now let's go to the next data type, that are numbers. So here I am going to declare another variable called age, and I'm going to assign the value 30 to it. Now here, as you can see, age is the name of my variable. Again, we declare it using the let keyword, and we assign the value 30 to it. Now why is 30 not enclosed in double quotes or single quotes? That is because 30 is a number and not a string. Now the next data type that we have is booleans. Now booleans can have values like true or false. So let me declare a boolean here called is cool, and I say is equal to true. Alice is cool. So is cool is a variable that is treated as a boolean, and it can hold values either true or false. Okay, now let's say that I want to print all this on the console. So again, we type console.log, and within parentheses I can give the name of my variables. So here console.log first name should print the first name, which is Alice, the value stored inside the variable called first name, which is Alice. And similarly, again I will use another console.log and print the age, and I will also use another console.log and print the isCool variable. Alright, now let me just refresh the browser here. Now you see on the console tab over here, we have the name, the first name printed Alice, then the age 30 and the boolean which is true. Alright, so this is how you declare variables in JavaScript, and these are the types of variables or data types that we have, and this is the way in which you can print them or display them on the console. So we discussed about the string data type, and this was the number data type, and then the last one that we discussed was the boolean data type. Now one thing worth noticing is that we did not specify what is the data type of each of these variables that we have used here. Like for example, we just said let first name equal to Alice. We did not say that first name is going to be a string. We just assigned the value directly to it. Similarly, we just said let age equal to 30. We did not say that age is going to be a number. We just assigned the value to it. Now this is one of the most powerful features of JavaScript, and this is called dynamic typing, which means that variables are not declared with a specific data type. Instead, the type of the variable is determined at runtime based on the value that is assigned to it. This makes JavaScript really flexible, as a single variable can hold values of different types throughout the program's execution. Okay, now one more thing that you must have noticed here is that whenever I was declaring variables, you see that there is a specific way in which I have been naming the variables. So you can use any name for the variables, but don't use keywords which are reserved to JavaScript. And here you can see that whenever I am starting, I start with a lowercase, and then when we come to the next word, I start with an uppercase. Now this is called a camel case or a camel naming convention, where we start the first letter of the first word with a lowercase, and for all the following words, the first letter of the word would be an uppercase. So you can see age here is only a single word, so everything is in lowercase. Now isCool, actually it is a combination of two words, so I start is with I lowercase, and the next word cool, C, starts with an uppercase, and there are no spaces between them. So this is called camel case or camel naming convention. So this is something that you can use in order to make your variables more readable. Okay, now let us apply this concept of variables and data type that we have studied into the project that we will be building. Alright, so here I have written a few code in our JavaScript. I have removed everything else that we had written earlier. Let's see what these things are. So here I am declaring a constant variable called quote text element. Again, you can see we are following the camel case here. So here it says constant quote text element equal to document.getElement by ID, and within parentheses and within double quotes quote text. Now what does this mean? In order to understand this, let us just look at our index.html file once and look for this word called quote text. Now if I come to the index.html file, you can see that there is this quote text over here. Now quote text is the ID that is given for this click the button to get your first quote, which you can see here on the browser. This is the ID or the identifier that is used to identify this specific element on the browser. Quote text, this is the ID given to that. Now if I come back to the script.js file, so here using this document.getElement by ID, this actually returns a reference to the object with the specific value of that ID attribute. Now what it means is that it is going to look for the ID that has this text, that is quote text, and it finds this, and that element is captured over here using this syntax document.getElement by ID, and whatever is captured is stored into the variable called quote text element. Now note that it is a reference to this element which is stored in this quote text element. Now similarly, we also want to get or grab the quote author and the new quotes button. Now for that, let me just close this console here once so that you have a better view. And you see, if you go to the index.html file, we have code author, which will be displayed over here, which is not here right now. And then we have this new code button, which is actually this button that we are talking about. Now we want to grab the IDs of each of these elements, and we do that using this document.getElementById. And all of them are stored to different variables. So here you see, first one was code text element, and this is stored to code author element, and the last one is stored to new code button. Okay, so we have captured all of them. Now what can we do with this? Now here you see in this line number 6, I have written code text element. What is code text element? Code text element is this, right? We have captured the ID of this element. The reference to that element was captured and stored in this constant. And I say text content. Now what is text content? Text content will allow you to modify this text content that is written over here. So here it was written, click the button to get your first code, but now I am replacing it with, we are now in control. So this text content will allow you to replace the text that is there in that element. So after writing this, if I just refresh this page, you see here it says now we are in control. So that previous text is gone, and whatever is written here is replaced by it. So you see what we did. We declared 3 constants, and we used document.getElementById to grab the HTML elements. And now you see when we run it, the text on the page has changed. Now this is the core of interactive web development. So you learn how to use variables and what are data types in JavaScript, and you have also seen how we can make use of this in order to make our web development interactive, and how to modify things on the website or the app that you will be building. Alright, now next we come to the next fundamentals, that is arrays and objects. Now our code generator app that we are going to build will need a list of codes, right? We will need a list of codes, and we are going to display each of them one by one randomly whenever the button is clicked. That's what we want to do. So for that we need a list of codes. Now the simple variables that we have declared so far can't hold a list. They can hold just single values. You saw that they can hold either a single string or a single number or a single Boolean value and so on. So in order to hold a list, we need something known as an array. Now an array is an ordered list of values inside square brackets. Let's see how they work. Okay, so we come back to our script.js file. So here let's say that I'm going to declare an array, and let's say it is a constant array so that we don't want to change the elements in the array later. And I call it colors, and I open this square brackets, and within quotes let me say red, comma, green, comma, blue. And let me close it with a semicolon. So here what I have done is I have declared an array called colors. It is called colors, and we assign the values red, green and blue to this array. So we open the square brackets, and since these are strings, we have to put them within double quotes or single quotes, and they are all separated by comma. Okay, so this array called color stores these 3 values. Now this is going to be treated as a string array, an array of strings. And we already said that in JavaScript, you don't need to explicitly mention what is the type of data that you are using. It has a dynamic typing where it dynamically understands what is the type of data that you are using. Okay, now in order to access this array, we can use the console.log. Let me use the console.log, and let's say we want to print the entire array. So I say colors. Now if I refresh this page, and if we open our DevTools again on the console, you can see the entire array is printed, red, green and blue. You can also expand it here, and you can see the elements of the arrays with their index. So you can notice that the indexing starts from 0. So red is the 0th index, green is the first index, and blue is the second index. And the length of the array is 3 because there are 3 elements in the array. Now you can also access each of the element using its index. So here, instead of printing the entire array, let's say that I want to just print the first element of the array, which is red. So within square bracket, I can give the index, and if I refresh the page again, you can see only red is printed now, which is the first element of the array, which is of the 0th index. So that is how you can declare an array and assign values in an array. Okay, now for our code generator app, we need an array that contains the list of codes, and also we need the author of the code. Who is the author of the code? So we see that we need to group them. So the code should have two parts, the text and the author, and we need to group them. So for that, we need to use something known as an object in JavaScript. Now, what is an object? An object is a collection of key value pairs which are put inside curly braces. Let us take an example and try to understand. Let me remove this array from here, and let me declare an object here which is going to be a constant, and let's say that I call it user and starts with equal to, and I open curly braces, and within this curly braces, let's say that I declare a variable called first name and colon, and the name, let's say the name is John, and comma, then the next I want to have age colon 25, and I end this object using a semicolon. So here what we have done is we have created an object called user. An object, as we said, it is a collection of key value pairs. Now what are keys and values? Here first name is the key, that is the variable name that we are giving here is the key, followed by a colon, and the value that you assign to it, that is the value. So John is the value, and here again age is the key, you have the colon, and we assign 25 to this age. Now all these objects have to be separated with the help of commas like you see here. And once the object ends, you can close the curly braces and end with a semicolon. You can also add more key value pairs by putting comma here and giving other values that you want as well. Okay, so let me say I want to print this on the console. So let me say console.log, and I just print the object as it is user. Okay, let's refresh and see. Now you see the entire object is printed, first name John and age 25. So if you expand this, you can see the key value pairs as well. Now you can also access specific values inside the object. So let's say that I want to print only the first name and I don't want to print the age. So for that, I can say console.log, and I say user, which is the name of the object, and you can use a dot operator and specify the variable that you want to print. So here it is first name. So if I say user dot first name, it should print only the first name. So here let me just comment out the first console log so that it will not be executed, and refresh the screen again, and here you see only John is printed now. So using this dot operator, you can access individual elements inside the object. Okay, now we have studied what are arrays and what are objects. Now let's combine these. We will make an array of objects to store our codes. Now why do we need this array of objects? Now as I already told you, we need the code and the author. So there should be a key value pair of the code and the author, right? And similarly, we need multiple of them. We need multiple codes along with their authors. So in order to store the key value pairs, we will use objects, and in order to store a multiple of those, we will use arrays. So we are going to make an array of objects to store our codes. Now this is a very common and powerful pattern that you can use in JavaScript. Alright, so here is the code that I have written for that. I have removed all the previous console.log and the example arrays and objects. And here you see, I am declaring an array called codes. You see, how do I know it is an array? It starts with a square bracket here and it ends with a square bracket here. So it is a big array which starts from here till here. Now what do we have inside the arrays? We have different objects inside the arrays. Now if you look here, each object has a key value pair. So since it is an object, it starts with a curly brace and ends with a curly brace over here. Okay, now let's just analyze one of these objects. So here the key is text. We are calling it text, which is actually the quote, and we have written the quote here within double quotes because this is a text. And then we have the author, which is another key, and the value is the name of the author. So here we have Steve Jobs, again within double quotes because this is a string. Okay, and then we can see that they are enclosed within curly braces because this is an object. And then we have the next object over here, which is again a key value pair of text and author, and again another one here, and so on. And we can see that each of the objects are separated using commas. So we said that in arrays, the elements have to be separated with the help of commas. Now here in our arrays, what are the elements? The elements are actually the objects, and the objects are separated using the commas. That is why you see this commas over here. Okay, and at the end, we close the array with the closing square bracket and end the array with the help of a semicolon. So here we have our entire array of objects that will be used for our app over here. So we have just declared and assigned the values to our arrays and objects. We are not printing anything on the screen. So even if you refresh this now, you will not actually see anything different right now. All right, so the next step in our project is to just pick one of the codes from this array and display one of them. So when we click the new code button, we have to display the code on the screen. So in order to do that, we need a reusable block of code that can pick and display a code from this list that we have. So for that, we can use something known as a function in JavaScript. So that brings us to the next section, that is functions and loops. Now function in JavaScript is a named reusable procedure. Let me give you an example here. So here we have a function, and this is how you declare a function. You start with the function keyword followed by the name of the function. So this name can be anything that you want. So get new quote is the name of the function that I am declaring here, followed by two parentheses, and the body of the function should start and end with a curly braces. So you see the opening curly brace here, the closing curly brace here, and whatever you see inside, this is the body of the function where we write the actual procedure that has to be executed. So here you see I am just writing a simple console.log statement which says button was clicked. Okay, now let me refresh this page and see if we can see anything here on the console. There is nothing here. Now why is there nothing even after I wrote a console.log? That is because I have declared a function, but I did not call this function. This function will only be executed when it is called. So let's see how to call a function. You can call a function by just mentioning the function name followed by the parenthesis and semicolon. So here in line number 32, we are calling the function. So when this function is called, whatever is written inside the function's body will be executed. So now if I refresh the page, you can see button was clicked is printed on the console because the function was called and whatever is inside the function is printed. All right, now we have to build the logic for picking and displaying a code on the screen. But before we build the logic, let's briefly also take a look at loops in JavaScript. So we have for loops in JavaScript, which is great for understanding how to access every element in an array or to make something happen repeatedly again and again. So for that, we use something known as loops in JavaScript. So let's take an example of a for loop and see how it works. All right, so here I have written a for loop, which is used for printing the list of all the authors that we have in our array. So let's see how it works. You start by typing the for keyword, okay, and within parentheses you have the initialization, the condition and the increment inside this for loop. So let's understand what they are one by one. First of all, we initialize a variable inside this for loop, which is used for iterating over whatever we are trying to iterate. All right. So here I say let I equal to 0. So we are declaring a variable called I, and I'm assigning the value 0 to it. Now after that we have something known as a condition. A condition is going to be checked. Now what does this condition do? Let's see. I less than quotes.length. Now what is quotes? If you remember, quotes was the array that we have declared over here. And quotes.length will give you the length of that array. Now what is length of the array? Length of the array, if you remember, is the number of elements we have in the array. So here we have 1 object, 2 object, 3 object, 4 object and 5 object. There are 5 objects inside this array. That means the length of the array is 5. So quote.length will give 5. Now the condition checks is I less than 5. What is I? I is initially 0. Is 0 less than 5? Yes, condition is true. Now if the condition is true, it will come and execute whatever is there inside the for loop. Now what is inside the for loop? It says console.log quotes of I.author. Now what is quotes of I? We are trying to access the elements of the array using its index. So I here initially was 0. So quotes of I would mean quotes of 0, and quotes of 0 means it is going to be the first object in this quotes array. Okay. And using the dot operator, we are accessing the author. That means within this object, we are accessing the author key, right? So it should print the value, which is Steve Jobs. Okay. Now what happens after it is printed? This part of the loop gets executed, which says I++, and it increments the value of I by 1. So I was 0, now I becomes 1. After that, it will check this condition again. So it checks if the I is now less than or equal to quotes.length. So what was quotes.length? Quotes.length was 5. So it checks is 1 less than or equal to 5. So condition is true. So it will come and again print the statement inside console.log. So quotes of I.author. So quotes of I will now mean the second author in the list, that is Eleanor Roosevelt. Now that will be printed on the console. Now this loop will go executing again and again until this condition becomes false. Now finally, when I becomes 5, it will check is 5 less than quotes.length, which is 5. Is 5 less than 5? No, condition is false. So when condition becomes false, it will break and come out of the loop. So let's just refresh the page and see if it is working as expected. So if I refresh the page, you can see all the names of the authors are printed here. So this button was clicked came from the function that we discussed earlier, which is from here. And after that, because of this loop, we were able to access and print all the names of the authors that were there in our array, or which were there in the objects that were stored inside our array. Okay, so that is how loops work in JavaScript. So we don't need loop for our final project, but it is a concept that is really good and useful for you to know when you are building things in JavaScript. So for the function that we are going to build, we just need to get a random index and display the random code from our list of codes that we have. So let's build that logic now. Alright, so here I have removed that for loop that we just used for explanation, and I have built on the get new code function that we had. So here, the first line in the function is for getting a random index from 0 to the last index of the array. So here what this function does, don't worry even if it looks a little confusing, what it does is it is just going to get a random index from our array that we have. So here we are multiplying it with quotes.length so that the index does not go out of the length of the array. That means we have only 5 elements in the array. So we should not have an index which is more than that index, which would lead to an error. So that is why we are using this function over here, math.floor and math.random. What does math.random do? It returns a pseudo random number between 0 and 1. To that we multiply quotes.length, which is the length of the array, and to the entire thing we apply this math.floor function, which returns the greatest integer less than or equal to its numeric argument. So basically what this does is it is just going to generate a random index for you from 0 to 4. Why is it 0 to 4? Because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 elements inside the array, and indexing starts from 0. And that index is going to be stored in this constant called random index. Okay, so we got a random index. Next, we need to get the quote object from that random index. For that, I use another constant called random quote, and I say quotes of random index. So suppose, let's say the random index 1 was picked. So this will be quotes of 1. So quotes of 1 means it is going to pick the second object here, which is this one. Why is it second? Because index 0 is this, index 1 is this one. Okay, now after picking the object, what do? We need to update the HTML elements with the new code. So remember, I showed you how to modify this text in the web page. So using that same technique, we are going to modify these text on the page. So what has to be modified? This has to be modified with the code, and this thing over here has to be modified with the name of the author. So we have already grabbed these elements in the beginning, if you remember here, using the code text element, where we have this element grabbed, and we have the code author element also grabbed and stored over here, and the new code button is also grabbed and stored over here. So we are going to update this HTML element with the new code data. So code text element, which is this one, dot text content. So I already told you dot text content is used for manipulating the text of that element, and it is equal to random code dot text. What is random code dot text? Random code here is the object that we have got, right, from the random index that we had. So random code, in our example, we said that it is the index number 1. So it is this one. Now random code dot text. Dot text means this text from here will be fetched, right? And it will be modified and it will be put in this text over here, which is the text content of the code text element. Similarly, code author element, which is here, and its text content is modified with random code dot author. What is random code again? Random code is the object that we fetched using the random index, and dot author will give you the author's name from here. Okay, now if I refresh this page, will anything happen? No, nothing will happen, because we have just made the function but it was not called. Now let me call this function here. Let's say get new code, and I just call the function. Now if I refresh the page, let's see what happens. Now you see the code is displayed over here. One random code was picked, which is this one. The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. So which one was it? It was actually this one, which was the first index or the second one. And the author was this Eleanor Roosevelt. Okay. Now you see, if I refresh it again, then you see another code is displayed, right? Why? That is because of this random function that we have used here for generating a random index. So each time the function runs, a random code will be picked and it will be showed on the screen. Okay, now this is happening only if I press the refresh button on my browser again and again, but that's not what we want. We want the codes to get generated when we click this new code button. Right now the new code button is not doing anything. So let's complete the functionality of the new code button so that clicking of this button would trigger this function. Alright, so we come to the final assembly where we are going to put everything together and make our code generator app complete. So here we need to make our code listen for user actions. Now what do I mean by this? What do we mean by listen to user action? Here, clicking of the button is an action by the user. So we have to make the code listen to that, and when it detects that the user has performed an action like this, then we need to trigger the function that we have written. Now this is called event handling in JavaScript. So we are going to add an event listener to our button, that is a new code button that we have. So let's see how we can do that. Okay, so now you see I have added this line number 41, which is an event listener to the button. Now here I can remove this function call and let's see what this does. Now what this will do is the new code function will run every time this button is clicked. Now new code button, new code btn, what is this? This was captured here if you remember in the beginning, we have captured this element and stored it in this new code btn. Now new code btn dot add event listener. Now what add event listener does is it is going to listen for events from the user. Okay, this is a inbuilt JavaScript method. Now what is the event it is going to listen to? The click event, when somebody clicks on this button. So within double quotes, click, this is the syntax, comma, what happens when it listens to click? We are calling this function, that is get new code. So basically what happens, whenever this new code button is clicked, it listens to that, and if it detects that, the get new code function, which is this function, will be called, which will generate a new code and will be displayed on the screen along with the author. Okay, that's what it does. Let me refresh the page now. Now let's see if it is working. Here we see quote of the day, click the button to get your first quote. I click it and yes, it is working. It has picked a random quote and it has displayed on the screen. Now if I click again, you see another quote is again picked and displayed on the screen. So randomly it is picking quotes and their authors and displaying on the screen. So when we are clicking on it, it is listening to the click, and when it detects the click, it is calling the function. So you see that you have built a fully interactive web application. Okay, so that is our code generator app. We have studied the fundamentals of JavaScript, and also we have seen how it is used in real life along with HTML and CSS in order to make the websites more interactive. So let's just quickly recap what you've accomplished. You learned about the core trinity of the web: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And you learned the JavaScript's fundamental building blocks, which are variables, data types, arrays, objects, and loops. And you learned how to use DOM to control your web page, and you use functions and event listeners to bring it all to life. Now this is the foundation of all front-end web development. Now your next steps are to learn more about DOM manipulation. DOM stands for Document Object Model, and it is a programming interface for web documents, specifically like HTML. Now you can extend this project by maybe trying to fetch codes from a real online API and eventually explore more powerful JavaScript frameworks like React or Vue. But for today, you have achieved something incredible. You have brought a web page to life and learned the fundamentals of JavaScript. So as I already told you, in the description, I have put the link to the HTML and the CSS code that we have used in this project, and the JavaScript part, I am not going to put it because I want you to practice it yourself and understand how this works. So I hope you have enjoyed this session learning the fundamentals of JavaScript. Learn by building. So thank you for watching and see you in the next one.